Welcome everyone to our first session this year of the Latin American Ethnographic Seminar. This series is hosted by the Center for Latin American and Caribbean Studies, which is part of the Institute of Languages, Cultures and Societies at the School of Advanced Study, University of London. And the seminar is run in collaboration with CROLAC, the Center for Research on Latin America and the Caribbean at Queen Mary University of London, with Aberdeen University, and with the Spanish National Research Council. We've been running the seminar for more than a decade, initially in person at CLAC's home in Senate House in London. But since the pandemic, we moved it online, and then eventually we decided to remain online as an opportunity to be joined by colleagues in other parts of the world, especially in Latin America and the Caribbean. And if you have participated in our seminars before, you may have noticed that we have changed our name from Latin American Anthropology Seminar to the Latin American Ethnography Seminar. And this is because some of us, being based in interdisciplinary departments, are interested in encouraging the participation of colleagues who are not trained in anthropology, but do employ ethnography in their own research. We are three conveners who jointly coordinate this seminar. Jessie Sclair, who is based at Queen Mary University of London. Denise Roman, who is based at the University of Aberdeen. And myself, Ainhoa Montoya, and I'm based at the Spanish National Research Council and the School of Advanced Study. And the seminar now runs monthly on Thursdays at 5 p.m. UK time from October until March. Exceptionally, our next session will be in 2 weeks, but in general, we will have a frequency of a seminar every 4 weeks. And so our next session will be on Thursday, 16th of November. And we're going to post the full program on the link to the full program on the chat. And so we invite you to browse the program and check out future sessions and hopefully join us. So before we hear from our speaker today, I'm going to hand it over to Denise, who's going to introduce him. And she's also going to tell us about the seminar's format. So thank you again, everyone, for joining us. And over to you, Denise.
Thank you, Ainhoa. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. I am delighted to introduce our speaker for today's session, Pablo Jaramillo, who is an associate professor of anthropology at the University of Los Andes in Colombia, and a visiting fellow at CLAC's at the School of Advanced Study, University of London. His current work focuses on the anthropology of natural resources and energy futures in Colombia and Latin America. And he has conducted extensive ethnographic research on renewable energy projects, controversies surrounding the expansion of coal mines, and the livelihoods of small-scale gold miners in Colombia's Caribbean and Andean regions. He is the author of the book Etnicidad y Victimización, Genealogías de la Violencia y la Indigeneidad en el Norte de Colombia, and has published extensively in journals such as Cultural Anthropology, the Journal of Latin American and Caribbean Anthropology, Journal of Cultural Economy, Cultural Studies, and Geoforum. Pablo's talk for today is entitled Speculating with the Terminator. He's going to be speaking for around 45 minutes, and afterwards we will open up for a Q&A, aiming to finish around 6:15 UK time. If you would like to ask a question, please use the raise hand function available on Zoom, and I will ask you to unmute. Alternatively, you can post your questions and comments in the chat box while Pablo is presenting, and I will read those out during the Q&A. We ask you to please keep your microphones on mute so there's no interference. If possible, especially during the Q&A, and you are able to do so. We also encourage you to turn on your cameras so Pablo can see some faces in the room. And finally, just we let you know that we are recording a Pablo's talk, but not the Q&A, and it will be available at the CLAC's website shortly. Over to you, Pablo.
Thank you very much, Denise, Jessica, and Ainhoa for inviting me to this fantastic seminar. I'm very, very glad to share with you this paper, which I'm going to read. I don't usually read these things, but considering the shape of the argument, I thought it made sense. So I'm going to jump straight to the paper, and then hopefully we'll have time to talk at the end. I'll show you some pictures in the middle of the paper, but I'm not going to be projecting a PowerPoint all through my talk. So here I go. So this is how the story starts. So I was a child. We were playing football when the blue helicopter passed over us. He came to buy shares in the Corona Gold, said Ruben when I inquired about the widespread rumor that no other than the Hollywood actor and Terminator star Arnold Schwarzenegger had visited the town of Marmato in the 1990s. So different versions of the visit coinciding that it took place when the actor had starred in one of his most famous roles in the Terminator 2 Judgment Day, but they also differ in essential details. So I delve into those trends and disparities to find the affective regimes and historical experience of people marginalized by financial capitalism in Colombia. So this is Marmato here, and this is an ancient settlement of 9,000 people in the heart of the Colombian Andes. And the place has been the site of successive waves of extractive booms and busts caused by speculative forces. Today, as you can see in the slide, the lower part of the mountain is occupied by large-scale mining operations, while the upper zone is claimed by small-scale and artisanal and independent miners. So this is a key thing to bear in mind. So here I argue that the people of Marmato privilege the story of Terminator because it directly frames financial speculation as a kaleidoscopic episode in a long and cyclical history of crisis and destruction. But most importantly, I point to the fact that the story, a tale of the future acting on the present in order to avoid the apocalypse, is vital to affects ways of knowing and political openings alternative to financial and extractive capitalism. So I'll frame some conceptual questions first. So this paper is part of a larger conversation on the affective grounds of economic and political life. I engage with Lauren Berlant's efforts to understand the affective regime of the capitalist present through the concept of cruel optimism, which is a binding fantasy that blocks the satisfaction they offer. And this in order to conceptualize the way speculation becomes present in people's lives, instead of taking it as a given object. So crucial to Berlant's analysis is that a shared historical sense, and I'm quoting here, comes about as aesthetically mediated affective responses. In her work, the present is perceived first affectively. The present is what makes itself present to us before it becomes anything else, such as an orchestrated collective event or an epoch on which we can look back. Ordinary life and extraordinary events, in turn, become the main terrain of constant interrogation and scrambling for resources and skills. In Marmato, as elsewhere in Colombia and in Latin America, financial speculation appears as part of recurrent colonial shapes, but also as a domain in which it can be re-examined and re-articulated. So I reconstruct the Arnold's visit and its consequences through 6 ethnographic vignettes, each one leading to a reflection on the affective regime I intend to describe. So this is the first vignette. Let's put it here. It's called Encounter. So I was talking to a group of guacheros, miners without mining title, at the entrance of their mine when I heard the story of Arnold Schwarzenegger for the first time. They said that Marmato was so prized that even people like the Hollywood actor had been interested in the gold deposits. When I asked Bernardo, the head of the House of Culture, a public institution, where this story was true, he took it for granted and said that he would often brag about the event. Once a group of people from Supia, he said, which is a neighboring town, were talking shit about Marmato. But then I said, at least we get visit from really important people like Schwarzenegger, not reggaetoneros and vallenateros. So from the outset, Arnold's visit indicates a desire to connect to an otherwise marginalizing global process of financial speculation. It was Bernardo who pointed me to a woman who could provide a direct account of the visit. When I spoke to her, she was the principal of Marmato's main high school. When the visit took place, she was a young girl mesmerized by a group of foreign visitors from the north. The event took place at her house, mainly because the group of strangers wanted to buy some mines in town, including her own family's business. The town has been mined since pre-Colombian times and through alternative regimes of extraction during the colonial period, including the hacienda with a slave workforce in the 16th century, British concessions, and more recently by a mix of medium and large scale mining operations with capital of several origins, besides obviously the small scale miners who occupy the mountain. Over the last 3 decades, a combination of revenue high, a hungry state, and financial crisis that have caused soaring gold prices has put the town under the constant pressure of multinational corporations. As the school's principals told me, Arnold got out of the helicopter. He was wearing a blue overall, a baseball cap, and sunglasses. Meanwhile, she gestured to mimic his muscular arms and stood on her toes a bit to imitate how tall he was. As she talked, the principal also blushed, looked increasingly nervous, and said she didn't want to tell much more. In her accounts and attributes, there was awe and pride in having been witness, but also shame. So let me come back to speculation in anthropological theory, which has emerged as a prominent theme in recent times. Speculation is simultaneously an ethnographic and analytic concept that helps us unveil how capitalism acts in space and time. On the one hand, speculation is part and parcel of financial instruments that connect actors with capital to extractive sites. As Lipuma and Lee have argued, derivatives, the most common type of a speculative financial instrument, commoditize risk, carefully separating the threats of the investor's interest and the suffering of the human and non-human landscapes impacted by the effects. Speculation works as and through technologies of imagination, as Laura Baer has called them. These technologies of imagination act to extract surplus value and also manifest themselves in varied, heterogeneous, and even contradictory forms. But as I intend to show, these technologies of imagination can be further affected. In her book, Migrant Futures, Bank argues that financial speculation requires specific subjectivities and bodies whose lives are predictable and can thus be used to extrapolate future trends. Bank shows how other speculative fiction genres, such as queer science fiction and Afrofuturism, effectively counteract the colonization of the future in financial capitalism that defines the fate of people and landscapes. The fact that the story of Arnold's visit focuses on a character that incarnates the possibility of acting in the present to affect the future should not be dismissed as secondary. Key to my argument is that the story mobilizes an interplay between past, present, and future of Marmato's dwellers and small-scale miners, which in turn entails a sense of historical agency among them to reclaim the control of their lives. So let me go to the spectacle, the second vignette. Part of the simultaneous secrecy and pride about the story goes back to the events surrounding Arnold's visit. In the early 1990s, Alberto, the school principal's brother, worked for Gran Colombia Resources, the company that invited the investors that allegedly included the actor. When the company bought his family's mine as an outpost for future operations, Alberto became the liaison between the venture and the community. So we got a communication, he said, that we had to wash the mines from the mouth to the bottom with soap, water, and brushes. There had to be lighting and security signals. Then I got the order to buy land to build a road. Then we were told to paint all the houses along the old road. So from the outset, the investor's visit contained all the elements Anna sings called a spectacle of a speculative capital. The sense of expectation mounted, and so did Alberto's anxiety about not being able to deliver. Alberto realized that he was planning for the visit of the investors of the company, 22 gringos, he told me, because he got the order to buy boots for people with big feet. The day of the visit was pouring rain, so the cars could not reach the site. We had to hire 200 mules to get everything to the site, but there was money. That was a beautiful event, he recalls. In the end, they had little time to spare in the company's office, which was Alberto's family's home. It was all finally turning out well, and it was then that one of Alberto's brother was mesmerized by the event, pointed to a particularly large guy who talked like this, and Alberto mimicked the way he walked. He had extravagant sunglasses, and wherever he went, two guys followed him. Alberto's brother was an admirer of Schwarzenegger and had a poster of the actor in his room. Look at that guy. Look at the picture. Oh, yes, it looks like him, said Alberto. So he and his brother went outside and tried to take a picture, but the bodyguards stopped them. Soon afterwards, the visitors called the helicopter and left for good. Alberto and his sister are the only eyewitnesses I managed to talk to. Even among them, the details diverge considerably. What remains is the intensity of the event, the awe and shame, the appreciation of the northern masculine body, the sensual and sensory experience, the pride, but above all, the unsettling feeling that something was about to happen in town. The event thus captures how financial speculation takes shape through affects that involve a sensual, emotional, sensory connection with the forces and agents of their marginalization. The specter of Arnold, an investor who knows something they don't, and that can change the course of history. Coming back to Lauren Berlant, she has influentially characterized the affective regime of current capitalism as cruel optimism, a binding of fantasies that block the satisfaction they offer, and a binding to the promises of optimism as such that the fantasies have come to represent. This is not a mere illusion and representation. It has effects on the experience of the everyday life. is the affective force of a speculation as it appears in the accounts of the visit a cruel optimism of sorts, I ask? In part, yes, because it entails the sense of taking a part in a larger history that is nonetheless harmful. But as I will explain, in cases of marginalization with colonial roots, it is necessary to consider the value of the events in a larger history. So let me go to the next vignette here. It's called Premonition. Arnold's visit unleashed powerful forces linked to a widespread of historic damnation among Marmato's residents. So I'm quoting here a poem here. Gold, blessing, curse, wealth, poverty, hunger, displacement is the closing line of a poem by Bernardo Alvarez, who, besides being the director of the local House of Culture, wrote poems in his spare time. Quoting again, most of what we write is complaint, complaining and whining. That is what we do. He told me as we read poems aloud in his office. Then, during an interview, he said that gold is the cause and reason of existence of Marmato, a tragic situation. He then stood up and picked up a book off the shelf in his office. It was an unpublished manuscript, and he knew exactly where to open it. Then he read, Marmato, the desired prey of packs of foreign crooks, who wander around arranging everything like Pedro por su casa, selling, liquidating, taking away, giving away, and ordering. 500 years of nothing, cataclysm is clear. Every day, a new trace of backwardness, of suffering, as if time was in retreat. It was the prose poem by Marta Garcia, and this is a world in which what has not happened still leaves traces, slippery times, and times in retreat, she calls them. Days later, a few phone calls took me to Marta, who worked in the office of a mine. I asked her if by time in retreat, she meant a future that looked bleak, and she said, no, the future is this way because the past is going away. She explained to me that she had written this line in the mid-1980s, and she thinks it foresaw what was about to come in the 1990s and 2000s. And then present, when we talk, 2017, the decay of the town. I wrote it as a premonition, she told me. What Marta anticipated, she told me, is closely linked to the consequences of speculation and crisis the visit unleashed. As Alberto recalls, around 1995, the new company started geological explorations in Marmato and visited mines beyond the sites where the initial visit had happened. Then the first high-tech drilling company, Terramundo, came, and for the first time, Alberto heard the rumor that the new company would buy the town. In many cases, they had ready-made checks, so the owners walked out of the office having sold their mines, wondering whether they were dreaming or crazy, as one of them recalled. Sometimes after that, there appeared other SUVs Alberto didn't recognize. They were also buying mines. These people were doubling already extravagant offers of Gran Colombia resources to undo the contracts previously made. So, and other companies offering money also came. About 2 years after that, Gran Colombia Resources paid a new installment of their arrangements, but said they would stop handing out more money and return the title to the miners without demanding any money back. That became the new normal in Marmato, an endless cycle of speculation over the mines, followed by the collapse of arrangements and the liquidation or exit of the company making the deal. But the people of Gran Colombia Resources returned in 2006 and bought the biggest mine in town, located in the lower part of the mountain where the town sits. They also secure almost every mining title and mine in the higher part of the mountain and most existing gold processing mills. Then they proceed to close the mines and demolish the mills. During this time, Marmato built in a steep slope where houses and mines were located side by side, became a systematic target of projects to demolish buildings through risk prevention. Then, in the mid-2000s, risk talk translated into concrete action to evict the people. In 2006, let me share a picture here. A landslide swept away La Plaza, one of the most central and emblematic parts of town, providing the perfect excuse to speed up the relocation of the population to a lower lot called El Llano. The rich interplay between past, present, and future signal by time in retreat make a particular kind of intuition, premonition, as Marta explicitly put it, central to this affective regime. Premonition points to a form of affective mediation in which bodies are already present in events that are about to happen. This is key to a theory of speculation in which people reframe temporalities of financial processes in other historical relationships. With this, I want to point that theories of speculation have not fully acknowledged the experience depends upon the kind of time people think they live in. To capture this idea, the French historian François Hartog has proposed the concept of regime of historicity. In Hartog's usage, regime links together past, present, and future, and in turn, historicity refers to how individuals or groups situate themselves and develop in time, that is, the forms taken by their historical condition. And with this, let me take you to the colonial reverberations of the story. So this is the fourth vignette. Today, Aris Gold is the largest scale mining company resulting from these speculation cycles. During my fieldwork, it was called Caldas Gold. When I asked Ruben, a wage laborer in the company, about Arnold's visit, he took it for granted and said, "And you know who's been here many times? Álvaro Uribe, and many times, and Pablito." So they were referring to none other than Pablo Escobar and the ex-president Álvaro Uribe. So accounts of Arnold's visit get easily mixed with those of other guests. Characters like Arnold Schwarzenegger, Álvaro Uribe, Pablo Escobar share some features. They are all white men from privileged backgrounds who know something about the future and influence the present of places like Marmato. There are certain gender bodies that tend to affect Marmato more than others. The rumor about Arnold's visit is a symptom of broader perspectives on historical reiteration that can be observed in many places and narratives of Marmato. Take this one, for instance. Below the massive statue of Jesus in front of the town's main church is a plaque commissioned in the 1980s by the people of Marmato living in a nearby capital. It reads, "Marmato, your prized gold is the source of wealth of strangers and the cause of misery to your people." This greed for gold is at the heart of more encompassing and pervasive experiences of historical and personal course. And this mural I'm showing you in the slide is another representation of that, with an eagle taking a bar of gold, miners dancing, and a contract made between Simón Bolívar and British companies during the 19th century to allow the exploitation of Marmato's mines in compensation for the independence campaign support of the Brits. So the sense of a tragic return expresses itself again and again in history. Condemned to be displaced, condemned to plunder, to a few slaps on the back, to lie, reads another poem by Bernardo. Four moments are central to this sense of damnation: and are recurrent in accounts of the present. So these are, besides today's situation, the conservative government at the beginning of the 20th century, Simón Bolívar concession of the mines to the British, the Hacienda regime in late colonial times, and the encomienda system in the early colony. But there is another sense in which gold courses are felt. So this is my fifth vignette. And it starts speaking about colonial returns with Juan Carlos, another poet, but also a miner who writes most of his poems in the shaft. And this is called Verses to the Marmato Mine. He wrote this during a break in his mine. And this is the actual handwriting, but I'm gonna translate it to English. To strangers, our town is just a mine, coveted by them, that is up on a hill, that keeps them up all night. But it is that but how it is that they will stay to finish off the town and disappear, displace all of us. This is the poem by Juan Carlos. The damnation of the town not only signals the image of historical recurrence, but also the possibility of personal annihilation. The destruction of ancient buildings brought about by the speculative events came along with the extermination of all relationships around mines. Mines had changed hands many times in the past, but miners were unemployed immediately. In 2009, however, while doing the study for large-scale extraction, the multinational operation closed their mines, leaving the whole town idle. On the verge of mass unemployment, people reoccupied the mines. Centuries of exploitation had left unexplored but rich gold veins and pockets in the tunnels. So these deposits are called guachas, and the people from Marmato and beyond who reoccupied the mines call themselves guacheros, people who reoccupied to extract this. And in the slide, you can see, on the one hand, I'm gonna show you a slide of gold prices from the 1990s, and then the stocks from Caldas Gold at the time when the crisis erupted and the miners reoccupied the mines. In Marmato, as in many places in Colombia and elsewhere, gold is full of potency. And this is clear in many ethnographic works by Davignon and Tausig and Mete Hai in Mongolia and Daniel Top in Chocó in Colombia. So the ambivalence of gold's potentiality reverberates across many fields, including governmental relationships, historic marginalization, and toxic substances or infrastructures, like, say, for instance, Rubiano Galvi's work on mercury, or Jesse Youngman's work on infrastructures and estate making in the site. Many miners in Marmato praise the mines for being open to everybody. Virtually anyone can make a living out of gold. The metal is certainly associated with a source of life in the whole region, but as this literature also points out, gold is full of danger. It can curse people, and its extraction is surrounded by spells and bewitching. So generative and destructive forces coalesce around stories of success and return to poverty of legendary miners. So the same idea of return permeates relationship with gold itself. Fernando Rangel, for instance, was one of the first to adapt large-scale mining techniques involving cyanide leaching to small-scale operations. His riches are mythical in Marmato, as is the fact that he was forced to beg for food in the years prior to his lonely death. These kinds of stories revolve around the affirmation that gold is both materially and conceptually inapprehensible. And the properties that gold acquired during Guacheria made it very prone to unleash negative potentialities. Guacheria entails the perceived feeling that the goal itself is acquiring political, economic, and material qualities that are difficult to handle. Guacheria elicited renewed anxieties about the future of life, manifested, among other things, in accounts of individual courses of miners. The courses that surround the quest for gold during Guacheria come with a feeling of impotence, reflected in lethargy, idleness, emasculation, and incapacity to act in the world. Impotence instead entails a form of existential elimination, an incapacity for reproduction, a set of fears of self-annihilation, anxieties about how to proceed in everyday life. Although no miner or lay inhabitant of Marmato uses the expression time in retreat, I connect the recurrent haunting of courses felt at the personal level during Guacheria with the historical references to time in retreat. Let me take you finally to the sixth vignette, which is called Popularist Speculators. In 2019, one of the leaders in the defense of the town against the multinational corporation invited me to a meeting with a group of 10 businessmen who still control most of the mines in the higher part of the mountain. The subject of the meeting was a visit by a team of Canadian journalists who would report the situation of Marmato in their country, the same country used by Caldas Gold as proxy, and many other Canadian mining companies operated. Many other mining companies operate through Canada, so that visit was very significant. I told him I was excited to witness the emergence of political alliances around the protection of the town. After all, the people who had invited the journalists to town were miners who had been reluctant to join demonstrations in the past. Seeing all mining sectors together on the table meant a bright future to me, not to him. As he went to explain, the organizers of the meeting and future hosts of the journalists were people who had sold their mines in the past, but were still demanding payments. What they were doing, he told me, was to foster conflict to finally reach a more favorable monetary settlement with the company. The new interpretation framed others' actions as an act of what Baer calls popularist speculation, which describes everyday appropriation of effort amid liberalization processes to popularize capitalist speculation that are expected to bring prosperity, but nonetheless reproduce the same kind of risky logic. But I don't think this is the end of the story. My friend's theory about the other leaders' motivation was also highly speculative in a generative way. It means that politics in this town inescapably takes shape through an affective regime that encompasses both financial speculation and ordinary rumors. Not far from Marmato in Chocó, Daniel Top describes the ways in which speculation around potential investment in the territory invokes illegality, crime, and violence, but also fosters Afro-Colombian organization in reframing claims for territorial autonomy. So this sort of multi-level speculation is crucial to political organization in Marmato. In a way, speculation has driven political action in the municipality. In every activist meeting I have had the chance to attend, the thread of the debate are new facts, events, and realizations the leaders bring. A new law will be passed, a new player is interested in Marmato, a new deposit has been discovered, everything will change, nothing will change. Marmato will return to the past or will change. That openness is quite central to political action as I describe it here, and not the end of the story. So I'm basically describing a speculation as the beginning, not the end, the damage done, but also the desire for new openings. So let me bring this to a final conclusion. Marta's otherwise pessimistic message about Marmato carries with it a potent structure of affect. Time in retreat, like the story of Arnold's visit to Marmato, are stitches on time in Dubé's sense. So quoting Dubé, I say, they critically reveal the mapping and molding, the reiteration and reworking of colonial cultures and vernacular practices, their constitutive contradictions and contestation and contentions, formative instability, ambivalence, and emergent distinction and novelty, the tension and textures of empire and nationalism, history and modernity. They put all this together and rework it. This is what I think Time in Retreat does. I find political openings appearing in the form of a speculative premonition, as it engenders organizations and political creativity, as well as perdurance in the context of hardship. Politics in Marmato cannot be thought of outside such speculative affects. It is tempting to close by dwelling on the integrity of the story. Are all those rumors real? But would that make any difference? Let us suppose that Arnold did visit Marmato. In that case, would that make a speculation more powerful? Such speculations matter because they point to a major inquiry that underlie my analysis. How should we create a speculative ethnographic theory? This is what I'm trying to pursue here. So the article finally proposes taking a speculation and its affirmative resonances as evidence of the possibility of alternative futures in the margins of capitalism. In this regard, the question is not whether there is a more liberatory speculative fiction than other, but how rumor storytelling and fiction become transformative of stories, practices, and relationships as they become the blueprint for worlds otherwise. So thank you very much, and I'm happy to hear your comments here.
Thank you very much, Pablo, for this rather thought-provoking presentation. It was really, really interesting.